We do welcome the announcement made by the Department of Higher Education Training in this regard. However, we are having particular reservations that we have as a union, of which we would like to raise sharply as far as this budget is concerned. Firstly, for instance, we are honestly not really impressed to the fact that this money is enough to resolve the problems that are coming through NSFAS in the sector. For instance, recently we've had problems with NSFAS having to base its own decisions based on availability of resources. So many students were unable to actually get funding because even though they were actually deserving of the funding, but they could not get it because the money was just not there. And here we speak of hundreds of students that were unable to get this thing. So it means therefore to us that this money is not actually going to be sufficient to ensure that into the next year, students are going to get funding as in when they deserve it. Secondly, we've got the problem at UNISA that we've raised constantly with NSFAS. That speaks basically to the fact that students of UNISA must be beginning to get allowances that are equal to all other students across the country. So we believe then that if we are to include those students of UNISA, all of them, together with those students that have been rejected and the continuous students for next year, we don't really think that this money is sufficient to resolve those problems.
So on the issue of the budget, you say it's not enough money. The allocation as things stand is 49 billion rand for NSFAS for the current financial year. How much would be enough to cover all students who need assistance?
Firstly, UNISA alone currently has got close to 500,000 students. And amongst these, the SRC of UNISA has briefed us that close to 200,000 students are in need of NSFAS funding. So it is those numbers of students and also those students that currently in the sector have been rejected by NSFAS based on the fact that they do not have enough resources, even though these students have been proven that indeed they do qualify. But also, many students that have been continuing with NSFAS have had their appeals being rejected on the basis that, NSFAS, in as much as it is convinced that indeed these students deserve to be funded again. But NSFAS will end up declining because it does not have resources. So if you combine these numbers together with those that are going to be first entering students next year, then it tells us that honestly, this is not going to be sufficient. But what we think, and what we've always said to government, to DHET, is that we believe that at least they must begin to think about 100 billion if they are to honestly resolve the funding problems in the sector. Because as a union, we are not going also to speak only about NSFAS, for instance. There are other issues that speak to NRF. If you look at NRF, it was not even given R1 billion, less than that. And this thing, we've raised it to the head to say that there's a problem because there's a crisis of graduate funding in the sector. So now they are even not responding to those things. So the money appears to be fine from a distance, but it is not going to be able to resolve the problems that are common in the sector.
Well, the minister has also indicated that the ministerial task team that's been looking into the development of a funding model for the missing middle and post-grad students who are unable to access other funds has made significant progress. In fact, the submission of its report is imminent, according to Minister Blade Nzimande. Does that then give you some reassurance that work is happening behind the scenes to make sure that those who've been left out now are at some point covered as far as funding is concerned?
No, honestly, we cannot really say that we're impressed with that because there's been a perpetual existence of committees that whose work are not really giving us the desired fruits. Because this is not the first committee, by the way, to be put in place to look into that issue. And furthermore, as a union, we have given DHET concrete, research papers that basically speaks to how best postgraduate funding can be done. So it cannot be that now the department, go on to say that they're creating this particular committee. For us, this committee is really, a further delaying because already for students that do not have funding, which further makes it worse insofar as student debt is concerned. But another issue, however, even though we're raising these reservations, of course we welcome some of the things that the minister said there. For instance, the development that is announced to be directed towards historical disadvantaged institutions such as Unizulu, and also the additional, the addition of a campus in Kiani. These are the things that we believe that are going to, deal much with the demand of the higher education sector in the country. So, these ones are welcoming them, but also we've always said that the gap that is existing between historically white universities and those that are historically black and disadvantaged is quite alarming, and it is incorrect that government is playing, far from resolving those matters. So we believe then that this budget speech by the minister is really speaking to that thing, and of course that we are taking it, with a happy smile as a union. We are very impressed about that one. And furthermore, we believe that NSFAS alone. Yes.
Lastly, sir,
we believe
if
that
I can come in there,
ought to.
Mcolisi, because we're running out of time, pardon me, I want to move away from the issue of just funding for tuition, right? Because it's one thing to have your studies covered, but accommodation is also a big problem. In fact, it's keeping many young people, poor young South Africans, out of university and TVET colleges. 2.9 billion rand is the allocation for the current financial year. The minister himself says it's not going to be enough to cover all who need it, and conversations are going on with the private sector to get assistance. Tell us about how the lack of funding is affecting students who you are working with at the moment.
Firstly, we must indicate that one of the things that we have identified as a union is the issue of mental health amongst our students. That is actually at its lowest across the country, across all 26 public institutions, universities. And we have, at the center of this, we believe that as a union, it is basically the question or the issue of funding. Because firstly, insofar as accommodation is concerned, it is not all students across the country which deserve to get accommodation that get it in any way because of the accreditation policy, which many SRCs through ourselves as a union, they've written numerous times to DA to say, we need to look into this policy and be able to make it contextual. Because in other universities, they are very much limited private off-campus residential places that meet those requirements. And therefore, NSFAS refuses to accredit them through the universities. And what happens is that we are pushing those students to stay behind, people's houses in garages, which makes it very difficult for them to continue with their academic project and hinder. So these are part of what frustrates the students, but also in other universities across the country. We've noted the fact that, the demand that's given by DET to resolve, to pay for the accommodation fees is not really enough. So therefore, we are appealing to DET, and we've done so in numerous meetings, to say that it is important that they look into universities as case-by-case scenario to determine the amount that is supposed to be given for student accommodation. And we know that there was a commitment by the minister, by the president, to say that there is going to be more than 40 billion for student funding. We've not seen that money, and for us, we believe that it is not going to assist because most students are going to end up not doing well academically and they pay students by NSFAS.